Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association and with deep affection, I present the Cecil B. DeMille Award to Miss Barbara Stanwyck.
Barbara Stanwyck watched her mother die at age 4. By 12, she was working to survive. But the most shocking chapter of her story was still to come. Now, her family breaks their silence about the cruel way she treated her adopted son, the abuse she endured in her marriages, and the devastating truth about her final days. This is the story Hollywood tried to hide for 50 years. Barbara Stanwyck's life began far from the glamour of Hollywood. She was born Ruby Catherine Stevens on July 16, 1907, in Brooklyn, New York. The youngest of 5 children, she grew up in a struggling working-class family. Her father, Byron Stevens, was of English descent. Her mother, Catherine McGee Stevens, was Irish. They lived at 246 Classen Avenue, where life was anything but easy. Even as a child, Ruby's world was shaped by hardship. Brooklyn in the early 1900s was a tough place where survival meant being strong. A photograph of her at age 2 shows a serious little girl with a frown, almost as if she already understood that life would not be kind. That toughness never left her. It would later become the foundation of her career and the no-nonsense attitude she brought to the screen. Her transformation into Barbara Stanwyck wouldn't just be about changing her name. It would be about surviving tragedy, finding her own way, and turning pain into something powerful. At just 4 years old, she witnessed the most horrifying moment of her life. On a cold day in 1910, her pregnant mother stepped onto a moving streetcar. An intoxicated man got into an argument with her. In a sudden act of violence, he shoved her off. She fell hard, hitting her head on the pavement. The impact was devastating. She lost the baby and developed a severe infection. Within days, she was gone. Little Ruby had watched it happen, too young to understand, but old enough to carry the memory forever. What followed made the loss even worse. Just 2 weeks after Catherine's funeral, Ruby's father left. He abandoned all 5 of his children, claiming he was going to work on the Panama Canal. He never returned. Some say he died on the way and was buried at sea. Others believe he simply disappeared. Whatever the truth, Ruby never saw him again. With no parents to care for them, Ruby and her older brother Malcolm, whom she called Byron, were left in the hands of their 14-year-old sister, Mildred. Mildred was still a child herself. She worked as a showgirl, struggling to make ends meet. She tried to take care of Ruby and Malcolm, but the burden was too great. Before long, the 2 younger children were placed into foster care. Foster homes in the early 1900s weren't places of comfort. They were places of survival. Ruby was sent to one home after another, sometimes moving 4 times in a single year. She and Malcolm were often separated. She later said that life in foster care wasn't cruel, but it wasn't kind either. It was just indifferent. There was no warmth, no real sense of belonging. She often ran away, going back to their old house on Classen Avenue, hoping to find her parents waiting there. Of course, they never were. By the time she was 14, she understood that no one was coming to save her. She left school and started working to support herself. Her first job paid $14 a week. Wrapping packages at a department store, it wasn't much, but it gave her a sense of control over her own life. She also worked as a telephone operator and took on clerical jobs, doing anything she could to stay afloat. Even then, she had something that set her apart. She never complained, never looked for pity. She just kept going. "I knew I'd have to earn my own living," she later said, and that's exactly what she did. In 1923, just before turning 16, Barbara Stanwyck walked into the Strand Roof nightclub in Times Square to audition for a place in the chorus. It was a big moment for her. She had no formal training, no connections in the industry, and no safety net to fall back on. But she had something just as powerful, an unshakable drive to make something of herself. The Strand roof, sitting above the Strand Theater, was one of the hottest spots in New York's nightlife during Prohibition. Performers, musicians, and entertainers filled the stage, while wealthy patrons filled the seats. When Stanwyck earned a spot as a chorus girl, it meant more than just performing. It gave her financial independence at a time when she needed it most. It also put her in the middle of a world where talent could open doors if you knew how to make the right impression. That same year, she got her next big break. She joined the Ziegfeld Follies, one of the most famous stage productions of its time. Performing at the New Amsterdam Theater on Broadway was something many dancers only dreamed of. The Follies were a spectacle: extravagant costumes, breathtaking choreography, and high-profile audiences filled with celebrities and social elites. The schedule was brutal. Performances sometimes ran from midnight until 7 in the morning. But Stanwyck thrived in that environment. Every late-night show, every exhausting rehearsal, every moment on stage sharpened her skills and strengthened her discipline. She wasn't just learning how to perform, she was learning how to command attention. At the same time, she found herself working in a part of New York's nightlife that few Broadway performers ever saw. During Prohibition, the city's real energy was in the underground speakeasies, and Stanwyck worked as a dance instructor in one of the most exclusive clubs run by Texas Guinan. Guinan was a legendary figure, known for running some of Manhattan's most notorious speakeasies. Her club wasn't just a place for drinking, it was a gathering spot for artists, writers, and performers who didn't fit into society's mold. The speakeasy where Stanwyck worked was one of the few that catered to the gay and lesbian community, providing a rare safe space at a time when such places were almost non-existent. Being there changed her. She was surrounded by people who lived outside of society's expectations, people who refused to hide who they were. It gave her a perspective that most young performers never experienced. It also introduced her to figures who would remain in her life for years, including pianist Oscar Levant, who later became a key player in Hollywood. By 1926, Stanwyck had outgrown the chorus line. That year, she landed a role in the Broadway play The Noose. At first, it was a small part, a chorus girl, just like she had been in real life. But during rehearsals, playwright Willard Mack noticed something different about her. She had presence, something that made people watch her even when she wasn't speaking. Impressed, he expanded her role and encouraged her to change her name. She became Barbara Stanwyck. The first name came from Barbara Frietchie, a character referenced in the play. The last name honored actress Jane Stanwyck, whose name Mack had seen in an old production program. It was a new identity for a new career. The Noose premiered on October 20th, 1926, running for 9 months with over 197 performances. An incredible success for a Broadway show at the time. Critics took notice of Stanwyck, praising her emotional depth and natural presence. She was no longer just a dancer in the background, she had become an actress. Barbara Stanwyck's first speaking role came in The Locked Door.
Well, here we are, Anne. How do you like it?
It's like being on a pirate ship.
Oh, pirates were pikers compared to the way
A pre-code drama released in 1929. She played Anne Carter, a young woman caught in a scandal aboard a Prohibition-era rum boat. This was a time when Hollywood was transitioning from silent films to talkies, and many actors struggled to adjust. Stanwyck later admitted that her performance felt awkward and untrained, but her experience on stage helped her adapt. The film itself wasn't a major success, yet it put her on the radar of important directors, including Frank Capra. That attention would soon change everything. Capra was hesitant about casting Stanwyck in Ladies of Leisure, 1930, but a screen test directed by Alexander Korda convinced him otherwise. Capra was hesitant about casting Stanwyck in Ladies of Leisure, 1930, but a screen test directed by Alexander Korda convinced him otherwise. She landed the role of Kay Arnold, a party girl who becomes the muse of a wealthy artist. Her performance was raw and full of emotion, something audiences weren't used to seeing. When the film premiered on April 5, 1930, it became Columbia Pictures' biggest box office success at the time. Capra quickly realized Stanwyck wasn't just another actress. She had a rare ability to disappear into a role. He often captured her best takes on the first try. This film marked the beginning of her rise to stardom and the start of a long friendship with Capra. Another director who saw her potential was William A. Wellman. They first worked together on Night Nurse, 1931, a daring pre-code drama where Stanwyck played a nurse who uncovers a plot against two children. The film was tense, provocative, and featured a young Clark Gable as the ruthless chauffeur. Wellman admired Stanwyck's natural acting style and cast her in 4 more films. Whether it was a Western or a hard-hitting drama, she proved she could handle any role thrown her way. Barbara Stanwyck was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, yet she never won. Her first nomination came in 1937 with Stella Dallas. She played a working-class mother who loved her daughter so much that she gave her up, knowing it was the only way the girl could have a better future. The final scene is unforgettable. Stella stands outside in the rain, watching through a window as her daughter gets married, smiling through her tears, knowing she can never be part of her life again. It was heartbreaking. Stanwyck almost didn't get the role. Producer Samuel Goldwyn thought she was too young, not glamorous enough. It took serious effort from her agent Zeppo Marx and actor Joel McCrea to change his mind. She proved them all wrong, delivering one of the greatest performances of the decade. But when Oscar night came, the award went to Louisa Rayner for The Good Earth. 4 years later, she was nominated again, this time for Ball of Fire, 1941, a screwball comedy where she played Sugar Puss O'Shea, a fast-talking nightclub singer hiding out with a group of professors who are studying slang. Gary Cooper played one of them, a shy linguist who falls for her. The film, written by Billy Wilder and Charles Brackett, was inspired by Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, with Sugar Puss as Snow White and the professors as the dwarves. Stanwyck made Sugar Puss bold, funny, and smart. She gave the role depth, making it more than just a comedy act. That same year, she also starred in The Lady Eve, another screwball classic, and many critics thought she should have been nominated for that instead. Still, Ball of Fire showed her incredible comedic timing. When the Oscar went to Joan Fontaine for Suspicion, Stanwyck lost again. Then came Double Indemnity, 1944, the role that made her a film noir legend. As Phyllis Dietrichson, she played the ultimate femme fatale, luring insurance salesman Walter Neff, Fred McMurray, into helping her kill her husband. From the moment she appeared at the top of the staircase wearing just a towel and a thin gold anklet, she had the audience in the palm of her hand. She almost didn't take the role. She was worried playing such an evil character would ruin her image. Billy Wilder convinced her by asking, "Are you a mouse or an actress?" She chose to be an actress. The film was dark, pushing the limits of Hollywood's censorship rules. Her performance was ruthless, seductive, and dangerous. It redefined the femme fatale. But when Oscar night arrived, the award went to Ingrid Bergman for Gaslight. Her fourth and final nomination came in 1948 with Sorry, Wrong Number. She played Leona Stevenson, a wealthy invalid who overhears a murder plot on the telephone, only to realize she's the intended victim. Most of the film takes place in her bedroom, with Stanwyck carrying nearly every scene. Her fear and desperation grew with every phone call. She made the audience feel trapped with her. The tension never let up. Critics raved about her performance, calling it one of the best of her career. But once again, she lost, this time to Jane Wyman for Johnny Belinda. 4 nominations, no wins. Some say it was politics. Stanwyck refused to sign long-term contracts with big studios, which meant she didn't have the powerful backing that helped other actors during awards season. Whatever the reason, the Academy never gave her an Oscar during her career. It wasn't until 1982 that she received an honorary award for her superlative creativity and unique contribution to the art of screen acting. By then, she had already cemented her legacy. By the late 1950s, Barbara Stanwyck's film career was slowing down. Hollywood was changing, and leading roles for actresses in their 50s were becoming harder to find. But instead of stepping back, she embraced something new. Television was growing fast, and she saw an opportunity. In 1958, she made her first notable TV appearance on Dick Powell's Zane Grey Theater, playing a woman out for revenge after her husband's murder. It was a small role, but it marked the beginning of a major shift in her career. Over the next 2 decades, she became one of television's most respected and celebrated actresses. In 1960, she took center stage with The Barbara Stanwyck Show, an anthology drama series on NBC. Each episode told a different story, and she starred in many of them, playing a wide range of characters. The show only lasted 1 season, running for 36 episodes, but it made an impact. Her performance earned her an Emmy Award in 1961 for Outstanding Performance by an Actress in a Series. Even though the show didn't continue, it proved she could lead a television series just as easily as she had led films. Her biggest television success came in 1965 with The Big Valley, a Western series that ran on ABC until 1969. She played Victoria Barkley, the strong-willed matriarch of a wealthy ranching family in California's Central Valley. At a time when most Westerns focused on male heroes, The Big Valley broke the mold. Stanwyck's character was elegant but tough, kind but fearless. She led the show for 112 episodes, balancing dramatic storylines with action-packed moments. In 1966, her performance won her a 2nd Emmy Award for Outstanding Continued Performance by an actress in a leading role in a dramatic series. The show became a classic, remembered for its bold storytelling and for Stanwyck's commanding presence. Her journey into television had actually started a few years earlier with the Jack Benny program. This was her first ever TV appearance, and it showed a different side of her. Known for playing dramatic roles, she surprised audiences with her sharp comedic timing. She and Jack Benny shared a natural chemistry, partly because they had been friends for years. This debut set the stage for her later television career, proving she could adapt to any genre. Even as she grew older, she never faded from the spotlight. In 1983, at the age of 75, she delivered one of her most unforgettable performances in The Thornbirds. The 8-hour ABC miniseries, based on Colleen McCullough's best-selling novel, became a massive hit. It aired over 4 nights and became the 2nd most-watched miniseries in U.S. history, just behind Roots. Stanwyck played Mary Carson, a wealthy and manipulative woman whose actions set the entire story in motion. She only appeared in 1 episode, but her performance was so powerful that she won her 3rd Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actress. It was a stunning reminder that even late in her career, she was still a force to be reckoned with. Meanwhile, Stanwyck's personal life was filled with love, heartbreak, and resilience. She married twice, but neither relationship lasted. Both shaped her in different ways, leaving behind stories as dramatic as the films she starred in. Her first marriage was to Frank Fay, a vaudeville comedian known for his sharp wit and confidence. They married on August 25, 1928, in St. Louis. She was 21. He was 36. At first, she saw him as a strong and supportive partner, something she had never really had before. But Fay had a troubled past. He had already been married 3 times, struggled with alcoholism, and carried an arrogance that would soon become a problem. In 1932, they adopted a son, Dion Anthony Fay, hoping to bring stability into their marriage. It didn't work. Stanwyck's Hollywood career was taking off, but Fay's was fading fast. The success gap between them only fueled his resentment. His drinking got worse. His possessiveness turned into anger. The abuse started with emotional outbursts, but soon became physical. One night, he pushed Stanwyck down a flight of stairs. In another terrifying moment, he drunkenly threw their adopted son into a swimming pool. She endured this for years before finally filing for divorce in 1935. Their disastrous marriage is often said to have inspired A Star is Born, 1937, the story of a rising actress married to a man whose career is slipping away. After the divorce, she won custody of Dion, but single motherhood came with its own challenges. Fay showed little interest in being a father, leaving her to raise their son alone. Years later, she admitted that marrying him was a mistake she deeply regretted. Her second marriage seemed much happier at first. She met Robert Taylor in 1936 while filming His Brother's Wife. He was 4 years younger, a rising star at MGM, while she was already an established actress. At first, their relationship was more professional than romantic. She guided him through Hollywood, helping him navigate the pressures of fame. But over time, their bond grew into something deeper. They dated for 3 years before marrying on May 14, 1939. Their wedding wasn't entirely their decision. MGM studio head Louis B. Mayer pushed them into it, fearing that their relationship would cause a scandal if they didn't make it official. For a while, they seemed like the perfect Hollywood couple. They loved the outdoors and built a quiet life together on a ranch in Brentwood, Los Angeles. But after World War II, things began to change. Taylor wanted a slower life away from the spotlight. Stanwyck, still deeply dedicated to her career, refused to step back. Over time, the distance between them grew. Rumors of affairs on both sides only made things worse. Despite their struggles, they stayed together for over a decade before finally deciding to separate in 1950. Their divorce was finalized on February 21, 1951. As part of the settlement, she received 15% of Taylor's earnings until she remarried. But she never did. Even after the divorce, they remained on good terms. They worked together again in The Night Walker, 1964.
When you dream, you become a night walker.
Proving that their connection never truly faded. Stanwyck often called Taylor the love of her life. When he died in 1969, she was devastated. She withdrew from Hollywood for a long time, struggling to cope with the loss. After 2 failed marriages, she never remarried. Some believed she never moved on from Taylor, even after he married Ursula Thies in 1954. Others saw her decision as a sign of independence. She had built a life on her own terms, unwilling to compromise for another relationship. When Stanwyck got custody of her adopted son, she wasn't ready to be a mother. She had no experience with children and carried deep emotional wounds from her own childhood. Her mother died when she was 4. Her father left soon after, and she grew up in foster homes, never knowing what it was like to have real parental love. That shaped the way she treated Anthony. She kept him at a distance, often leaving him with nannies or relatives while she focused on her career. She didn't have the patience or warmth needed to raise a child. Their relationship never had a strong foundation, and over time, the gap between them only grew wider. To make things worse, Anthony reminded her of the marriage she wanted to forget. She reportedly resented him for that. Her parenting was strict and cold, and Anthony struggled under that pressure. He had problems in school, clashed with authority, and never met the expectations she set for him. Her second husband, actor Robert Taylor, once said Anthony was not a bad kid, but that didn't change the fact that he was becoming more of a burden in her life. Instead of trying to understand him, she pulled away even more. By 1944, when Anthony was 12, she decided to send him to a military school in Indiana. It wasn't just about discipline, it was a way to remove him from her life entirely. That same year, Anthony suffered a serious injury at summer camp and was hospitalized. Doctors tried calling Stanwyck, but she never returned their calls. She didn't visit him either. It was a clear message. He was on his own now. After that, their relationship was practically non-existent. The only meaningful interaction they had was a brief lunch in 1952, arranged by his uncle. By then, Anthony had already learned to live without her. Years later, when Anthony got married in the late 1950s, Stanwyck had no interest in being part of it. She refused to attend the wedding and instead sent the couple a bathroom set. It was an empty gesture that said more about their relationship than words ever could. When he had a son, her only grandchild, she kept her distance. She sent baby furniture and $100, but never made an effort to meet him. It wasn't that she had completely erased Anthony from her mind. She reportedly kept a photo of him in her closet, hidden away. It was a small sign that he wasn't forgotten, but he was deliberately kept out of her life. By the time she was dying in 1990, Anthony still held on to the hope that there might be some kind of reconciliation, but that moment never came. Stanwyck made it clear she didn't want him there. She banned him from visiting her on her deathbed, leaving him with no chance for closure. Barbara Stanwyck spent her final years facing serious health problems. She had been one of Hollywood's greatest actresses, but a lifetime of smoking had damaged her lungs and heart. By the 1980s, she was struggling with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and congestive heart failure. She had started smoking when she was just 9 years old and only quit in 1986, 4 years before her death. Her health took an even bigger hit in 1982 while filming The Thornbirds. She inhaled special effects smoke on set, which led to a year-long battle with bronchitis and repeated hospital visits. Even with these struggles, she remained active, making rare public appearances and receiving the American Film Institute's Lifetime Achievement Award in 1987. In early January 1990, her condition worsened. She was admitted to St. John's Health Center in Santa Monica, where she spent the last week of her life. She had always valued her privacy and independence, and that didn't change even as the end approached. She refused a traditional funeral and instead requested cremation. Her ashes were to be scattered over Lone Pine, California, a place that had been the backdrop for many of her westerns. She had always loved the West, and in a way, it became her final resting place. On January 20th, 1990, Barbara Stanwyck passed away at the age of 82. She died just before 5 p.m. The official cause was congestive heart failure made worse by COPD. Her death marked the end of a career that had lasted more than 6 decades. She had starred in over 80 films and had made a name for herself in television with The Big Valley and The Thornbirds. She was known for playing strong, independent women, and she brought the same strength to her own life. Though she was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, she never won. But in 1982, the Academy finally honored her with an Oscar, calling her an artist of impeccable grace and beauty. It was a fitting tribute to a woman who had given so much to Hollywood. At the time of her death, she had a net worth of $10 million, which would be about $22 million today. In the 1940s, she had been one of the highest-paid actresses in Hollywood, making $400,000 a year, roughly $6.5 million today. She was known for being stylish but never wasteful. She invested in real estate and managed her money wisely, avoiding the financial troubles that many other stars faced. She was as sharp in business as she was on screen. Her passing was deeply felt in Hollywood. Colleagues and fans remembered her professionalism, her talent, and her determination. She had spent a lifetime portraying strong women, and in the end, she was one herself. More than 30 years later, her films still stand as proof of her talent, and her legacy remains one of the greatest in Hollywood history.